Now it's my pleasure to introduce your presenter today, Mike Wilkinson. Mike Wilkinson has over 25 years of worldwide training and consultancy experience and was the 2013 Training Journal Award winner for Best Sales Program. Mike is the co-author of The Challenge of Value and Value-Based Pricing and has written many articles on managing major sales and value. He is a fellow at the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management and a member of the Professional Speakers Association and the Global Speakers Federation. His focus at Axia Value Solutions is on working with sales teams and organizations, helping them to understand, create, and deliver real customer value, and on capturing that value in price. So with that, Mike, welcome.
Thanks ever so much, Taylor. Thank you very much indeed. And hello to everybody. Can I just say it's a pleasure to be with you, and a warm welcome from here in Perth in Scotland, where it is 4 o'clock British summertime, although given the clouds you wouldn't guess that it was really summer over here, although for Scotland it's reasonably warm. Today, what I want to do is just to pick up on some of the issues that we frequently encounter when we're working with our clients, just to see how true these are for you and to look at some possible solutions. As Taylor mentioned, we work exclusively in the B2B space, and we're amazed by how many issues are common across all sorts of businesses in all sorts of business sectors. We frequently find ourselves working with clients who are in pursuit of what Tracy and Weersemer in their book, The Discipline of Market Leaders, call customer intimacy, and who see a consultative sales approach as being a key part of this. And we're also very much involved in businesses that want to become value-focused organizations. Now, what sometimes seems to be forgotten is that the pursuit of a value orientation to business involves a lot more than just the sales force. So selling on value involves organizational change, not just a sales training workshop. I mean, if you look at it this way, it's a bit like designing a new car. If you think of the sales team as the part the potential customer actually sees, you can make that all look really nice and flashy. With apologies to sales guys, of course. I mean, it looks good and it promises great things. The problem all too frequently is that when you then sit in it and put your foot on the pedal, nothing very exciting happens. It promises much but delivers very little. And that's because the focus too often is on the front-facing activity without really thinking about what needs to change under the bonnet, or as those Americans amongst you insist on calling it, the hood. And then as value delivery begins to suffer, everybody starts to lose faith. Now, the sales force can understand and promise great value, but it's actually the organization in totality that will actually deliver that value. So the question is the organization as a whole aligned around value? And a recent client of ours really summed this up perfectly. We are at our best when we are all aligned around customer value. So I guess the question is, are you comfortable that your business is completely aligned around customer value? In our experience, it is unusual. But if we agree that it really is important for businesses that strive to really deliver great customer value, the question then becomes one as to why is it so difficult to achieve? And in a way, that leads us to the 7 challenges of value. But before I get into the 7 challenges, I want to start with just 3. And these are what I now call the BBCs of value, if you like, the basic business challenges of value. And as I said, I think there are 3, because in most businesses we are all striving to do 3 things. First of all, we're trying to understand value, then we're trying to create value, and then finally we're trying to deliver value. But actually we're trying to do something a little bit more specific than that. And again, we're working with a client right now who really began to focus our thinking on what we should actually be doing, because our real focus isn't just on understanding value. The real challenge is actually on understanding customer value. It's on understanding how to create customer value, and it's on delivering customer value. And the real reason for that is very simple. It is because our customers define value, not us. So value is defined by your customers, not by you. So understanding, creating, and delivering customer value is a team game, or at least it should be. And that means that your business has a clear, consistent value message for its customers. It means that sales and marketing and production and finance and logistics and pricing means that we're all in this, and we should be all for one and one for all. But the question is, are we? Are we always all for one and one for all? And the one thing that seems critical to me in any organization that purports to sell on value is that everyone in the organization is absolutely clear on what is my role in understanding, creating, and delivering customer value. If they're not, it is not one business with one voice. So are you happy that within your organization everybody understands value and knows their role in creating and delivering customer value? I love the story about John Kennedy, which is apparently true, who after delivering his vision of putting a man on the moon and bringing him safely back to Earth, apparently made a visit to Cape Canaveral. And he came across a cleaner there and asked him what his job was. And the cleaner replied, "My job is to help to put a man on the moon." Now, our job, as we just said, is understanding, creating, and delivering customer value, which on the face of it should be a whole lot easier than putting a man on the moon, but all too often appears to be a great deal more difficult, or at least it comes across that way. So, with the three basic business challenges of understanding, creating, and delivering customer value in place, let's turn to the 7 challenges of value, because if we can address these as an organization, as product managers, as marketing departments, as pricing, as sales teams, then we should be well placed to deliver real customer value. So the first challenge, back again, is understanding just what value is. And as you can see, there are 3 parts to this. First of all, we need to understand what value is as a concept. Secondly, we need to understand what value actually means to our customers on the basis that our understanding of value and theirs might be different. And finally, as we just said, we need to make sure that everybody in our business understands value in the same way. So let's start with looking at value as a concept. Now, I don't know, some of you may have heard or even read about the experiences that I had at a conference in Copenhagen some years ago. And it was at the point at which our thinking around value really began to crystallize. And it started with the creation of our definition of value. And our definition became value is a mystery. So our job as a business, as salespeople, and everybody else is to solve the value mystery. And that means understanding what value means to our customers. It may seem to be a strange definition of value, but we came across all sorts of definitions, and amongst them was this, which initially I thought was a bit strange, but actually has really turned out to be a gem. Because if you think about it, when we first start to talk to customers, we can only guess at what value means to them. Our job is to understand what value actually means to them in reality. So solving this mystery starts to become absolutely critically important. And that's a primary part of our role. But value is a mystery doesn't actually help too much in defining and understanding what value really means. To do that, we need some sort of structure on which to hang our value message. And for that, we developed something called the Value Triad. And this identifies 3 critical components of value. The first is revenue gain. And really the question that goes along with this is, how can our product or service help our customer to improve their revenues? The second component was cost reduction. How can our product or service help our customer to reduce their costs? Now, these are both tangible and objective measures. We can put a real monetary value against them. Not necessarily an easy calculation, but it's a calculation that can be done. However, if you don't know how your customer generates revenue, or you don't know how they incur costs, this is going to be a good deal more difficult. And I'm not talking about a quick guesstimate of how they do it. I'm talking about a really detailed understanding. Because if you really know the answer to this and your competitors, do not, then you are a potentially significant advantage. And I have to say, this is one area where we frequently find that salespeople, particularly their understanding of how revenue is generated and costs are incurred, is patchy, sometimes to say the least. The final component of the value triad is something that we describe as emotional contribution. And this is much more intangible and subjective. And having said that, though, it is hugely important. As long as people make decisions, the emotional component will remain really important. And this is the value of trust, of confidence, the value of the brand, the relationships, the ease of doing business with you, the cultural fit, just feeling good about doing business with you. But don't underestimate its value if you have it, and definitely don't underestimate it if you don't. So not only do we need to understand the elements of the value triad and solve the value mystery with each customer, we need to make sure that everyone in our business also understands value as a concept and what it means to each customer. It's very hard to deliver customer value if you don't actually know what customer value is. And that leads us on to challenge number 2. And challenge number 2, interestingly enough, is to recognize that customers' value perceptions are constantly changing. So once we've understood what value looks like from the customer's point of view in challenge 1, we then need to recognize that those value judgments may be constantly changing. And that's because of budget impacts, changing internal priorities, changing people, political considerations, regulatory, and many, many other things, all which can have an impact and can change value perceptions. So as a result, it really is crucial to keep close and up to date with what is happening in the customer and in their thinking. Now, the third challenge is all about identifying and talking to people who care the most about your value. The bottom line here is that you can't sell value to people who don't care about value. And equally, as today's decision seems to become increasingly complex, not to say drawn out on some occasions, we need to win over those people who can really see and appreciate the value we can deliver. These people will then potentially act as our evangelists inside the organization, because the reality is that for most of us as salespeople, when the decision to buy or not buy from is made, usually we're not there. So we want to be sure that our message and our value is communicated effectively internally by understanding not just who, but how the decision will be made. And making sure that our internal value evangelists are well prepared to sell on our behalf. So we need to make sure that whatever our ultimate value proposition is for the sale, that our value evangelists inside the organization are familiar with it, understand it, and can communicate it effectively and persuasively. Challenge 4 is all about differentiation and about how you differentiate your offering. Now, the starting point here is that being different is not differentiation. You have to be different in ways the customer values, and you need to be able to calculate and monetize that value. But also, don't assume that your differentiation is purely product focused. Look at the entire experience that a customer gets when dealing with you and identify those areas where you can deliver a real differentiated value to your customer. Now, to deliver differentiated value, you need to understand your competitors and you need to understand your customers' perceptions of value. So from that perspective, back to challenge 1 and challenge 2. If you really have understood what is meaningful and valuable to your customer, you can then target your differentiation in ways that actually address those issues more effectively. Which actually leads us, in a roundabout sort of a way, into communicating your value. Now, we've already mentioned monetizing value, and that's because customers increasingly do not want and will not accept vague promises. They want firm commitments. They don't want to know you can save them money. They don't want to know that you can make them money. What they do want to know is how much and by when. And this is where tools like the leverage point tool can help hugely in this area. And creating a powerful and persuasive value proposition is critical. But for me, I think there are two value propositions that we should be thinking about. The first is the one that we should have for the beginning of the sales process. And this should answer the question, why should I talk to you? The second, monetized, focused value proposition is the one at the end of the sales process which says, why should we choose you? And joining these two things together is the value sales process, which should encompass a value discovery phase, which is all about solving the value mystery and understanding the issues, the opportunities, the challenges the customer faces, and the value aspirations that they have, and value demonstration, where you create and demonstrate and present how you can actually address the issues that the customer is actually facing. And building a powerful, persuasive final value proposition is important. And it's important that we actually think of a way of actually measuring that. And I think there are three key components of a really strong, powerful value proposition. The first is you want propositions that resonate. These are things so the customer can clearly see that your solution addresses their issues. So that they say to themselves, yeah, I can see that, I want that, I need that, I can understand how that fits in with what I'm trying to do. The second thing your value proposition needs to do, as we've just seen, is it needs to differentiate your solution. So that the customer can clearly see that there are things that you can do that they cannot get elsewhere or not as well elsewhere. So the customer thinks to himself, there's nothing I've seen that is as good as this solution. And finally, you need to make sure that your value proposition is substantiated, because not only do you need to talk a good story, but you need to be able to prove that you can do the things that you say that you can do, so that your customer can start to think, yeah, I actually believe this, I trust that they can actually deliver this. And this is where the power and the importance of great case studies, great reference stories starts to become really, really important. Now, if you put those three component elements together, that really does create a fantastic foundation for really beginning to leverage everything and moving towards a value premium-based pricing position, giving you lead generation success and leading to longer-term customer loyalty. However, just imagine, take one of those components away and the strength of the proposition is potentially fatally impaired. So, for example, no residents? The buyer's likely to say, I don't need this, it's not important to me right now, because they cannot understand or see how it addresses the requirements that they have. No differentiation, then they're going to say, well, you're dead easy to substitute, there are lots of potential suppliers, so what's your best price, or I can just do without you. And finally, no substantiation, or unable to substantiate, it leaves the customer to think, well, hang on a minute, it's a bit risky this, I'm not entirely sure that I trust this approach as well as perhaps I should. So I think for me, this is a fantastic tool to really think about how we drive up the quality of the value propositions that we have. And I came across this some time ago, actually, when I was looking at how to evaluate the quality of value propositions. And I have no idea who did it. So you can see at the bottom, the source is unknown with thanks. But if anybody knows who did it, please let me know, because I would like to give them the thanks that I think they're due, because I think it's a great tool. That then leads us on to challenge number 6, which is capturing your value through price. Again, the leverage point tool is perfect for helping to calculate prices that are based on value delivery. These are at the heart of your value proposition and in what we call the negotiating corridor. And this is the difference between the maximum price you could charge given your value delivery and the price the customer is currently paying, or the price they would pay if they didn't choose your solution. So all your work up to now has really been designed to help you make that negotiation corridor as wide as possible, by truly understanding the things that are important to your customer. And again, just as a quick reminder, if you do not know how your customer generates revenue, or you don't know where they incur costs, then it is going to be much more difficult to generate and demonstrate your value as effectively as you should. Now, remember, our sort of clarion cry is that price is not the reason customers don't buy. They don't buy because they don't see the value in our offer. Now, this relationship is hugely important for me, and this following highly complex formula sums it all up. We have to convince our customer that our value to them is greater than the competitor's value, whether that competitor is a real competitor or the do-nothing option, which is all too frequently the case these days. But, and it is a big but, if we do not understand or cannot articulate our value, or if the customer doesn't or won't understand it, then all you are left with is that your price is lower than the competitor's price. And this is the ultimate route to commoditization and disaster. But let's be positive. Now that we understand the things that our customer truly values and have differentiated and monetized our solution, this really should be much less of an issue. All that remains is to address Challenge 7. And Challenge 7 is to deliver and measure the value you promised. Because if you think about it, from 1 to 6, this is very much our value promise. Challenge 7 is to deliver it. And this actually takes us right back to the beginning. If the organization sees value as just something the sales force needs to be trained in so that they can talk about it to customers, then there is a real risk that things can go wrong from here. But again, I ask you, does everybody in your organization really understand their role in understanding, creating, and delivering customer value? Assuming they do, and that is some assumption, the next task is exactly that. It's about delivering and measuring the value you promise. So you need to measure your value and your performance. So make sure the customer is getting the value you promised. If he is, constantly remind him, because customers have this extraordinary ability to forget things like that. But if he isn't, then make sure you put things right. Because customers have a great ability to remember when things aren't going quite so well. And then finally, identify opportunities for delivering and creating even more value for the customer by understanding them in ever more detail. Because understanding leads to opportunities. And one, if you like, final comment. If you're going to deliver amazing value, think like a customer. Okay, that's pretty much it, Taylor. Thank you very much indeed to everybody. Again, if you want to contact me, there are some ways on the screen in which you can do that. But thank you very much indeed for your time, and back to you.
Great, thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate your insights. And we've had a few questions come in during the webinar so far, but there's still time to enter your question into the panel on your screen. While you're entering, a reminder to complete the 10-second survey while exiting today's webinar to receive a copy of Delivering Value Pricing through B2B Sales Teams, and to be entered into a raffle for one free copy of Value-Based Pricing. Now, to give you a couple more minutes to enter your questions, a few words on leverage points. In a Forrester research study, 319 executive-level buyers at global companies were asked about salespeople's meeting preparation. 62% felt that salespeople were knowledgeable about their company and their products, but almost 80% felt that the salesperson did not understand the customer's business issues and where they can help. Companies have to do a better job at transforming their sales and marketing efforts to communicate customer value. Sales cycles are long. It's important to add value on every call in order to move forward in the sales process. B2B companies that provide sales reps with the right tools to create and communicate the differentiated value of their offering early have a major competitive advantage to win the business. Over 60% of forecasted deals do nothing. That means you lose to status quo more than all other competitors combined. How does this happen? Well, it happens at the beginning of the sales cycle when a salesperson starts initial customer meetings giving a long corporate PowerPoint presentation about their company and product capabilities that lose the opportunity to present their value and create customer dialogue. Leverage point sales users show a master value proposition early in the sales cycle created by and editable by marketing and product management. Whether they're selling to vice presidents of sales, product management or marketing, or even to the C-suite, how do you want your salespeople to communicate the value your offering creates for the customer? A digital, smart, interactive value proposition is the compilation of the expertise from your value-driven marketers, product managers, pricing, and sales enablement professionals. Sales reps now have a cloud-based tool that easily communicates the ROI and value that your solution provides similar customers in their industry. It clearly shows this in graphical and summary form. Located beneath the graphs and summary, there are assumptions that can be quickly modified in the meeting to align with the buyer's data. Beneath the assumptions, the overall value being delivered is broken down into specific value drivers that can be drilled down further for those buyers that are interested. Marketing collateral is provided in the tabs all the way at the bottom, including industry case studies, videos, and white papers. Leverage point sales users are saying that by presenting this value to the customer early, they are wasting less time with unqualified prospects, allowing their pre-sales resources to spend more time working on winning qualified opportunities. Now let's look at the impact this has on the middle 80% of your sales force. Assume you have 200 sales reps and an average sales value of $100,000. Let's be conservative and say that presenting value early in the sales cycle provides just one additional opportunity per rep per year. That equals $16 million in additional qualified opportunities entering your sales pipeline. With a modest close rate of 20 to 30%, it's an additional $3.2 to $4.8 million in sales per year that drops right to the bottom line. If you're interested in learning more or seeing a personalized value proposition, please check the appropriate boxes in the survey upon exiting today's webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dick Orlando to help moderate our Q&A session. He is Leverage Point's President and Chief Marketing Officer. Dick.
Thank you, Taylor, and a special thank you to Mike. I've been working with Mike and Axia now for several years, and I can urge everybody on the call that is thinking about value selling or making efforts to articulate customer value better through their distribution organizations, that you contact Mike. In my opinion, Axia does a really great job not only at dealing with the top line revenue results that can be achieved, but also has a very keen eye toward profitability in delivering customer value. Thank you again, Mike.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Dave.
Before Taylor's going through the questions right now, but I have a question, Mike. What's one of the top issues as you begin a process, you get called into an account to talk about customer value or value selling? What's one of the top one or two issues that you hear from customers about the challenges of transitioning their organizations to customer value-based selling?
That's actually a really interesting question. I think part of the answer is in the question. The biggest challenge is in transitioning the organization. What tends to happen is that we will frequently get approached by people who want to start value selling. As I said in the session, there are two reasons why people seem to want to talk to us. One is because they've decided they want to adopt this customer intimacy strategy, and they see consultative or value-based selling as a part of that. Or they have decided that they've been battered too much on price, and the sales team is operating broadly on a discount default process, and they recognize that they need to break out of that. And very often they see the solution as being just to run some programs for the sales team on value selling. And just getting them to recognize that that is only a small part of the solution is actually an important part in the whole process. Of course, the sales team are fundamentally important. Of course, they are the people who are out there face to face with the customer. They are the people who ultimately will take the prices that the pricing teams put together and will sit in front of customers and see the whites of their eyes, and they will be the people who have to deal with pricing pressure, well, predominantly downward pricing pressure. But at the end of the day, they are not the people who ultimately will deliver the value. The organization as a whole will deliver customer value. So getting the entire organization aligned and understanding value in the same way is a real challenge. So I think for us, that's the biggest challenge we deal with.
Great, thanks. And I have one for you, Mike. What stage of the sales cycle do you suggest that you start introducing the value proposition?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I think, as I tried to say, I think we talked about elevator pitches and all sorts of stuff. I still think of those as value propositions, and I think there are two. As I said, I think there is the one at the beginning of the sales cycle, which should answer the question for the customer, why should I talk to you? I mean, these days, people are incredibly busy. Their time is very valuable. What they do not want is to have that time wasted. So you have to give them a really good reason why they should invest some of their valuable time in talking to you. So you want something that communicates very quickly and very easily why they should talk to you and why there may be some potential value in that conversation. And very often I would look, I think you've got to start by doing some background research. There is no customer in the world who would expect you to turn up today without having done some basic research on the business to understand what the business is, how it operates, and have at least an idea of what the potential issues for the client are likely to be. I mean, for me, it's a bit like turning up for an interview for a job. Nobody is going to give you a job if you haven't done any background research at all. So that opening question for me is really important. Why should I talk to you? And then as you go through that sales process, as I mentioned, the value discovery process and the value demonstration process, what you're trying to do is to take that initial value proposition or take your overall corporate value proposition and tailor it and focus it and hone it and finesse it until at the end of the sales process, you've got something which really, really summarizes for the customer, why should I choose you? And to be persuasive, it needs it needs to resonate, it needs to differentiate, and you need to be able to substantiate it. So for me, I think there are two. You use it at the beginning, you use it at the end. Again, when you've got your final value proposition, the question is where do you use that? And I think if you have to make formal presentations, you use it at the beginning of your formal presentation, you use it at the end of your formal presentation. Most times you'll go into some sort of question and answer session with the client, and most times at some point at the end of that, the client will turn to you and say, well, thanks ever so much, that's been really interesting, but before you go, would you just like to sum up for us why we should choose you? And you use it again then. And I'd even use it on proposal documents. So instead of your proposal document just saying a proposal document from so-and-so, it might say how working with so-and-so can save you $36,000 a year and improve your revenues by 25%, or whatever it is. But it's about trying to give that monetized, differentiated value proposition to the customer. So, long answer. I'm sorry about that, Taylor.
Mike, you brought up the term due diligence, and you mentioned customer data and knowing information about the customer before you go in. We get this objection all the time from marketing primarily that the sales force needs the exact data for that particular customer. You've talked in the past about how important it is for a salesperson to go in there creating credibility to say that we have done this for typical customers in your industry, and here's some of the data that we've that have resulted as using our solution. Maybe you can expound on that a little bit and to talk how important it is at the beginning of the sales cycle of establishing credibility that they're not the first customer who will be engaging with them to get these results.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there are there are actually two things going on at the beginning of the sales cycle, if you think about it. A bit like, as I said, it's a bit like going for a job interview in some ways. I mean, the two questions are, for you as the seller, you're asking yourself the question, is this the kind of customer that it's going to be good for us to work with? Potentially, are they going to be profitable? Are they going to be interested in the kinds of solutions I can bring? And from the customer's perspective, exactly the same. Are these the sort of people I want to work with? Do they have the kind of solutions that I'm looking for? So I think at the early stages of the sales process, from a seller's perspective, it's very much about if you like, qualifying whether this opportunity is worth pursuing or not. And again, it frightens me sometimes how poor the criteria are that many organizations seem to have in terms of how they determine which opportunities to pursue and which opportunities to turn down. And for me, I actually don't expect salespeople to do mountainous amounts of pre-work at this stage. This is absolutely the point at which we're trying to establish whether there is likely to be a fit between us and the potential customer. But I do expect them to do a basic account profile so that they understand what their customer does, who they do it for, what their challenges are, what their financial situation is, the basic background stuff. But one thing I also like them to do is to try to identify what is the customer's value proposition to their customers. Because if we can identify that, then we can start to think about whether we feel we can help them to deliver their value proposition more effectively. Because that starts to begin to put some serious power into the potential conversation. The other thing that I think is important that we should do, and because this does begin to demonstrate that you have actually taken care and you've thought about the thing, is to do what I call prepare a key issues worksheet, which for me has 5 columns on it. First column is, what do I think the issues are likely to be for this particular customer? Now, people say to me, well, how on earth can I know what the issues are if I've never met them? And my answer is that for most of us, we work in business segments, or our businesses are segmented in some way, and most of the customers in the segments have very, very similar issues. I'm guessing that most of you are probably thinking, yeah, that's actually probably true. If I think about most of my customers, most of the issues they face are remarkably similar. We work with clients across all sorts of organizations, literally all over the world, and I can absolutely guarantee that most of the issues that our customers face are exactly the same. So without even having met a customer, I can have a pretty good educated guess as to what the issues are. The second column is, what are the likely impacts on this customer's business of those issues? And incidentally, when I'm talking about issues, I'm talking about what are the business issues, the challenges, the objectives, the opportunities that the customer faces. Second column, what are the impacts of not being able to address those? The third column, if you like, is how can we help? What can we do to help the customer to address those issues? The fourth column is the value column. So it starts with what are the benefits to the customer of working with us, and then what is the value of working with us to the customer in terms of the value triad. So what are the potential revenue gain implications, the cost reduction implications, and the emotional contribution implications? And the fifth column is the prove it column, which is about how do you substantiate the fact that you can do the things that you say that you can do. So I think there is a lot that needs to be done before you go in to see a customer for the first time. But for me, those two things, just doing those two things, doing some background internet research, getting on the internet and all that kind of stuff, should not take more than an hour. And if an opportunity is worth pursuing, then it's worth putting a little bit of effort in up front to make sure that you come across constructively and professionally. Does that answer the question, Dick?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I have one here for you, Mike. When talking about value with customers, is it important to be able to talk about competitors' value as well, or only just focus on or drill down on customer value offered by the solutions that we offer?
Oh, wow, there's an interesting question, actually, and it's one that comes up quite a lot, because if you think about it, when we start talking about revenue gain, cost reduction, and all that kind of stuff, people say, well, compared with what? And I think there are two things. You compare it against a reference price, which I describe as the price that the customer would pay if your solution was not available, or the price that they are currently paying for the solution that they're using right now. So you've got a good benchmark against which to compare your solution. So I think that's part of it. I mean, the other part is that when you think about it, if we're going to differentiate our solutions, we are going to differentiate them against our competitors. And therefore, the one thing we need to know about our competitors is everything. So we have to understand our competitors in real detail. Now, another thing that I have discovered and I'm asked is, well, hang on a moment, what happens if our solution actually isn't as good as our competitor's solution? And what I've actually found is that if all you do is focus on your product and nothing else, this can happen. But if you actually focus on everything that the customer gets as a result of doing business with you, then you can still start to differentiate. And one particular area is imagine a situation where your sales team understands your customer and their business drivers and their value aspirations and their issues and everything much better than a competitor does. And I would suggest to you that in that situation you are instantly in a better place, because you should be able to demonstrate the fact that you can address those issues much more effectively than a competitor can do. So potentially there are opportunities when you can win business, even though your solution may not be quite as elegant as a competitor's solution, but simply because the competitor fails to communicate their value as effectively as you do. And I have to say, you only need to look around, I'm sure, in your own businesses, or certainly in the business segments within which you work, to see loads of examples of suppliers completely failing to communicate their value. And let's face it, any sales guy who comes back to you who's lost a piece of business and you say, why did you lose it? And they say, well, because we were too expensive, instantly is someone who's failed to communicate the value. I don't know whether that's a good answer, Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely answered it. And another one for you from me, how does the value selling process integrate with CRM?
Oh, well, and actually, Dick's first question was, what are some of the challenges that we have? And actually, that is another challenge. What we certainly try to do is that whenever we approach a customer, what we're trying to do is to work with them to develop a sales process that actually is their process. We don't dump a sales process on people. We work with them to co-develop something that works for them. And frequently these days the starting point is to look at their CRM process, because many CRM processes have a sales process embedded within it. And whichever way you cut it, while sometimes it will be really quite nice to dump it and start all over again, given the amounts of money that have been invested, that's not often a very useful suggestion. So what we try to do is we work with the processes that are in place. Most systems allow you to change things around, change terminology, but we overlay our very, very simple four-step value selling process over the top and use the CRM component elements, if you like, as the activities that go underneath it. So our value sales process is dead simple. Number one, you qualify opportunities. So you make sure that you're actually pursuing opportunities that you want to win and you are prepared to invest time and effort in. Number two, you move into value discovery. So you actually understand who's involved in the sales process and you understand the things that are important to them in terms of the issues, the challenges, the objectives, the value aspirations that they have. Stage three is you do value demonstration. Now you understand the things that are important from the customer's point of view. You begin the process of creating and communicating and demonstrating your value, and then when you've won the business, you then move into value delivery. And that's the point at which you start to make sure that you measure that you're delivering the value that you promised. So I think that kind of wraps the whole process up. So as far as CRM is concerned, you've then got the CRM process in place, and virtually all of them that we've come across so far then allows you to attach documents to individual customers, so you can begin to take some of the sales tools that salespeople currently use, finesse them, overlay them with best practice, so that you actually end up with a really nice rounded approach to selling and to value selling that begins the process process of encouraging salespeople who, let's face it, traditionally have an abject hatred of CRM, starts to begin to encourage them to use it a little bit more productively. And I have to say, on at least 2 projects we've been involved with, one of the measures as to whether the project has been a success has been our ability to drive up usage of CRM.
As you were answering, Mike, I was looking at some of the questions here. We must have a lot of premium price vendors on this webcast. So I won't ask you all of it. I'll consolidate it. But this is a tough question, I know, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We're a premium price vendor, and what role does pricing and product management play in providing and collaborating with the salespeople to sell a premium price product?
Wow. Well, you're quite right. What I would normally do at a moment like this, Dick, is I'd very quickly go offline and pretend it was a technical fault. I mean, again, I go back to the point that I made right at the beginning of the presentation, really, and that is that understanding, creating, and delivering customer value is an organizational issue. So the answer to the question is they all get involved. But one of the big things here is about communication. I mean, we talk to pricing people who hardly ever talk to salespeople, who price in a vacuum, if you like, without any real customer input. Similarly, the sales team have no idea where prices have come from. So, you know, there is that communications gap that exists, and I think one of the ways of beginning to make things more effective is to actually open up communications much more. Product management, when you're selling a premium-based product, is hugely important in helping to, if you like, get the top-line generic views of what individual segment requirements are, so that salespeople have what I would describe as that sort of segment-level value proposition. They have an understanding of what we stand for in terms of value delivery to the segment as a whole, so that I can actually then take that out to my customers and individually understand what's important to them, and then begin the process of tailoring the value proposition to meet the specific needs of individual customers. But again, when I look at premium priced suppliers, the reality, of course, of a premium price supplier is that not every customer is a premium priced buyer. So one of the key parts of premium priced selling is making sure that you target the appropriate clients and don't waste your time and resource on customers who are never going to buy from you. I'm going to go and hide now.
Thank you. I think we've got time for a couple more, so one more from me. Can you talk about the importance of the coaching role in the value selling process?
Yeah, for weeks, to be honest with you. I mean, again, I think one of the things that we do find is that organizations think that let's chuck a bit of value selling training in here and there and everything will be fine. First of all, I've already talked about the fact that there's an organizational impact on adopting a value sales approach or a value approach to business, which that does not address. The second is that actually changing a sales force from one that has, well, funnily enough, I was on the phone with a client earlier on this morning, and he actually said to me, one of the issues that we face at the moment is that we have a very traditional sales force, which is actually, in the nicest possible way, pretty much like having a walking brochure. So they'll walk into customers and they'll tell the customer about the great products that they have, and they have great products. But they recognize that that's not enough. Customers don't want to be walked into and just tried to be sold stuff. And there's this complete change of focus that value selling has. The first stage of value selling after qualifying the opportunity is value discovery. It's about making sure you understand the things that are important to a customer. That's a complete change of focus for very, very many salespeople still today. You know, you would have thought after all this time that that wasn't the case, but it is. We come across it all the time. tremendously technically astute salespeople who feel very confident and are excellent at explaining all the wonderful features that their products have, but feel very uncomfortable talking to customers about the issues that they have. So what you're talking about here is not a 2 or 3 day training program where everything will be wonderful afterwards. You're actually looking at long-term behavioral change. That does not happen in 3 days. And one of the other massive challenges that we face is encouraging organizations to really adopt a coaching approach so that they are constantly reinforcing the message with their salespeople, that salespeople come away from workshops with clear action plans as to what they are going to do, but they are not then just cut adrift and left to fend for themselves. People are out there with them, coaching them, supporting them, encouraging them right the way through the process. And we have done so many of these exercises now to know that when coaching is in place, the results come through. And why do we know that? Because we know that in the same organizations where coaching hasn't taken place, the results haven't. So you've got that really black and white sort of picture of how things do work when they're done well and how they don't work when they're not done quite as well. So yeah, coaching for me is absolutely fundamentally important. In fact, I'd actually go as far as to say that we will not any longer accept any sales training, sales value training workshops unless there is a commitment to coach as part of it.
Great, thanks, Mike. And I think that's about all the time we have today for questions, but if Mike did not get to your question, we will send him what was asked and he will follow up with you guys via email. But just one last reminder before you go, next week we are hosting another webinar, Increase Your Revenue for B2B New Product Launches. So if you're interested in registering for this webinar, please check the appropriate box in the exit survey. And that's it from us for today, so thank you all for taking the time to join us, and a special thank you to Mike for his insights and joining us on his birthday, so happy birthday, Mike.
You're too kind.
And from all of us here at Leverage Point, have a wonderful rest of your week and take care.
Yeah, guys, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you.